Are we going to start? Because I have to go do school. I can do sports, and then I got to fuck off, and then I'll come back.
Cast Iron Balls, a podcast about sports that would also like to point out that Tito Jackson, who died yesterday, was already 23 years old in 1976 when the Jackson 5, rebranded as the Jacksons for their move to Epic Records from Motown, released their 11th studio album. 23 in 1976, the year Jimmy Carter was elected president and dead yesterday. Not quite 71 years old, reached for comment while despondently wandering his grandfather's estate in Plains. Jason Carter muttered the following: "That's two of them now. Two of the Jackson 5. If Poppy hangs on to outlive a 3/5 majority of the original Jackson 5, I lose the house." Joe Jackson lived to 89, that mean old bastard. I thought this was a sure thing. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I'm fine, I guess.
Lori is fine, she guesses. Tonight is Monday, September 16th, 2024. Not just a sports podcast, but a...
No, just a sports podcast.
Jimmy Carter Aging Gracefully Appreciation podcast as well. I should mention here at the top, as I was going to say to you before we started recording, but why bother with normal, friendly social interactions if you cannot record them for posterity and potential monetization? I'm glad you're back, Abe. You weren't here on Thursday to record the show. You were traveling domestically. And so it was just Lori and I sitting here having a perfectly enjoyable conversation. But what I realized, as is illustrated by my extremely silly opening there that made you giggle, is that though Lori and I, and really Lori in my life, is my primary audience for most, if not all, of what I do outside of this room. Like if I were to write something, I would hope that she would like it. If I were to do something, I would hope that it would be at least somewhat for her benefit, or she would appreciate it in some way. But when I'm being my most obnoxious self, when I'm sitting in front of this television set with your big face on it, that's my primary audience. And without you there, it's like, we had a nice talk. And I listened back to it on the edit, and it's fine. I thought it was going poorly while we were recording it, but listening back, it was a perfectly enjoyable hour or so of talk to listen to. But you weren't there, and so I couldn't be my most obnoxious and gregarious self. And I think that it's to the detriment of my personal brand out there in the world. So welcome back to the show, Abe. You were missed.
It's good to be back. I was flying back last night on Sunday, and that was the occasion where I listened to that episode. And, you did your,
I feel so honored.
It was a great episode.
Right
by the
away.
Way. Yes.
You didn't even wait a week.
No. This was, I was curious. I mean, I wanted to listen to you two, but I was...
This is about Jimmy Carter.
I was interested to hear what Jimmy Carter picked, because I was like, oh boy, what a terrible... I mean, I enjoyed D.C. It was a great weekend with friends, and I love the city. I get to visit it often.
Let's save some travel anecdotes.
Yeah, that's for the other show.
Iron Brains. We can discuss any
sports.
Sports-related travel anecdotes now. But yeah.
Right. I only say that to say that even though the weekend, I mean, it could have been a disastrous weekend if Georgia had lost, but it was not a good weekend on my end. My Colts lost. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But I was like, I want to hear what Jimmy Carter has to say. And he, like, in retrospect, looking back, because I thought, I had a great Purdue, like the line moved, and I was like, oh boy, I may have a chance at this, and it did not go very well for those bums at Purdue.
No, it did not.
And Jimmy Carter, like, I thought he was going in my direction, and then he's like, nope, Notre Dame's going to win, and these fuckers did. So good on you, Jimmy.
Jimmy said, fade the public, and especially Abe. That's the new plan for Jimmy out in Plains, is fade the public, but especially if Abe has jumped on the public side of the number.
That's right.
Good trip, though? What was your sports? No, I just mean specifically, you had to watch the Dogs in Kentucky, presumably. I mean, what did you do with yourself?
Did you not?
To watch sports while in D.C.?
Okay. I have a confession to make. Due to all the moving about on Saturday, I watched zero football other than Florida man Anthony Richardson eating shit against Malik Willis. Like, I watched that whole game, and the fourth quarter of the Georgia-Kentucky game, when I just assumed this was...
Okay, fine.
This was a settled game, and then I didn't even look at my phone until I realized this game is kind of tight, and nothing is moving, and so I watched it on one of our phones. It wasn't even on the television anywhere. So
it was an emergency situation. We had to turn the game on.
Yes.
Thank God and whoever else for YouTube TV.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just imagine, just a few short years ago, you would have been watching the ESPN Gamecast, which sucks. And then a few short years before that, you just wouldn't know.
I do like the passive aggressive little message that YouTube gives you when you're out of town. You're like, hey buddy, you just visiting or what's
Traveling?
going on? Why aren't you in Atlanta? Like, I mean, I'll let you watch, but you have to tell them I'm just visiting.
Yeah, you've got 2 weeks, sir, and then we're cutting you off wherever the hell it is you are. You better go back home, is what YouTube TV says.
Yeah, the main thing that I heard, for some reason, even though I wasn't watching the game, information came to me that Arch Manning had a tremendous game and he ran it for 1 million yards in one possession.
I don't want to suggest that this is on the planners of this trip necessarily, but I mean, you agreed happily to go on a trip on a fall Saturday, and that's fine. But there's people who they swear off fall weddings because they don't want to. Fall Saturday weddings are verboten because of college football. It's
good people get married on Fridays. That's all I'm saying.
It's bold to make a decision to travel on a fall Saturday when football is going on.
So my strategy is just to be available to watch the important games. I didn't expect Kentucky to be one of them.
You never know, though.
You never know. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
that was my lesson.
I want to hear your thoughts on that fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, just a minute. We'll move into the 3 questions, 2 statements, and 1 hot take, because that, of course, would dovetail into this conversation. I only got 3 questions and 1 statement, so I will find a second statement to make at some point, and I'm sure that there's hot takes just floating about the room here.
Well, we're making tons of statements constantly.
Sure. My first question relates to the Georgia-Kentucky game, which the Dogs won, 13 to 12. 13 to 12. 13 to 12. Jesus. Is Kirby, as in Kirby Smart, doing this shit on purpose? And that's my first question, because this is not the sort of question that you would ever ask about a coach in the National Football League. It's not a question that you would ask about 97% of coaches in college football. You would maybe ask it about Nick Saban. You would maybe ask it about Ryan Day or Steve Sarkisian right now. You might ask it about Jim Tressel back in the day. And certainly you would ask it about Kirby now, as I am so doing. And it's because there's such a huge talent disparity between the top programs in college and even that next tier. And then when you look at Kentucky and you're like, they're not a second-tier team.
Right.
They're like a third or at best a third, probably like a fourth-tier team in college football. So you can imagine where a coach is like, we're going to hold back. We are going to – I believe that I am in such firm control of my program and my players and the outcome on the field.
They don't want to show anybody any future opponents.
Maybe. That could be part of it. That I can teach them a lesson and still, in all likelihood, get a win. And as I said, it's not like you wouldn't expect a confident coach in the NFL to just go out and be like, well, maybe we throw this one, because fuck it. Like, there's 18 weeks in the season. We got to play a whole bunch of games. And what's one loss? No, in the NFL, you would never do that because you can't afford that one loss. And you can lose to anybody at any given time. It's less so the case in college. I still think it's kind of crazy, to answer my own question, to suggest that Kirby is doing this shit on purpose. But it really seems like he might be doing this shit on purpose.
It would seem to be too implausible in this respect. I was watching the fourth quarter, even in the small screen on the phone. They cut to Kirby Smart. I think there was like a 3rd and short or whatever. There was some situation where they needed to convert. Like you could see Kirby Smart just kind of yelling, like, we need this, kind of like this, very adamant, like, we need this. If he were like 5-10 years older, he would have an aneurysm with all that energy he was using up.
Yep.
And so, like, to me, that tells me that this was not some sort of plan. I mean, if he came into the game like, we're going to be very vanilla and it'll be a close game just to kind of teach some lesson and we'll pull away late. If that were his plan, it fell apart in the fourth quarter. Basically, we just need to win now. Like, all that matters is we need to win. And if it weren't for the cowardice of Kentucky's coach, I don't know what the fuck he was doing. He should have just went for it. Like, I don't know why you would punt.
Punting. He was punting.
Man.
Like, what are you
we'll get
doing?
to that in a second.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up question. You say Kirby's not doing this shit on purpose. Follow-up question, is this what gets Kirby Smart hard? Is this what Kirby thrives on?
Like, not on purpose, self-sabotage, sort of, but the other way.
Yeah, I mean, he was very animated at least in the fourth quarter. Again, I don't know how this happened to be. Later this week, I'll watch that game again in full. But just in the fourth quarter and the way the score was going, like, it just didn't seem like this was something that you would plan.
What you're going to see when you watch this game is Carson Beck having maybe his worst game as a starter for Georgia. His head seemingly in the clouds, not making the throws that he normally makes, and just sort of, I don't know, like sort of, I mean, head in the clouds is the only way I can describe it. He's sort of walking off sort of like vacant-eyed and like just not clear.
Well, that's just what his face
sure,
looks
that's
like.
just sort of his face. But you're going to see that the Kentucky offensive line, their run blocking was fairly thoroughly dominant against our front four on the defensive side. You're going to see their running back, whose names I do not have ready to hand.
Something sort of African.
Come on, Lori.
I don't know. Sort of African? Fuck off. That's very broad.
Look, if J.D. Vance had not poisoned the national conversation with darkies eating household pets last week, I don't think that you would be so quick to throw out such racisms here on Cast Iron Balls. I think this is we have sufficiently coursened the national conversation.
It's open
to
season.
Get to this point.
Yeah.
You're going to see the running backs, who I'm sure have perfectly normal American names, bouncing.
Normal, huh? Normal.
Bouncing off of first contact and almost never being tackled by the first one or two people.
Yeah, it was weird
to make contact with them in a way that is like as though they're
greased.
Yeah, as though they were greased or otherwise just sort of pinballing off of Georgia players and turning every single play, turning a 1 yard or 2 yard play into 4 and a 4 yard into 6 and a 5 yard into 8. And it was like fucking infuriating. And then early on, you're going to see Brick Vandergruff, the Georgia transfer, who's gone to Kentucky now, being over pursued to the point where like we ended up with like I think 3 or 4 sacks on the dude for like 50 yards of lost yardage. But early on, we blew right by him like 3 fucking times, just at top speed, like a edge rusher or someone else comes loose and just flies right by the motherfucker 10 yards deep in the drop back there. And then he escapes and makes a fucking play. Like, it was a very, very frustrating game to watch. As I said many times in my text messages to my brothers and to Naveed, I just kept saying, this game sucks ass over and over again. Like, because it was just not fun. It felt like as you're getting later and later, it's like, holy shit, we might lose to Kentucky. Because, like, you've seen this before with this team where it's like, you know.
The SEC road opener has not gone well the past few years.
Yeah, and this is now 3 trips to Kentucky, where we have not scored 20 points. We won like 14-3 and 16-13 and now 13-12.
So it's getting worse.
Is it possible? I don't think it is, but I mean, I'll pose this question: is it possible that Georgia was ill prepared because they were looking ahead to Alabama? And they were just caught flat-footed because they have an open date,
but that
right?
goes hand in hand.
I think if it's that, then it's Kirby not wanting to show anything.
Right. That goes hand in hand with
Nick Saban, who he forgets doesn't work for them anymore.
We are going to just do the most vanilla, this thing that I complain about with this offense all the time, which is we're not going to really put a game plan in place for this particular game. And instead, we're just going to rely upon our superior talent to get the job done and then make the adjustments that are necessary. The other thing that you're going to see is it was late in the third quarter or maybe even the fourth quarter when they ran a play action and I fucking noticed because they hadn't been doing even something so spectacularly imaginative as running play action. And it was just run, pass, right? Like run for nothing, and then try to get it done on third down and have it not work. I think he was 5 of 13 on third down conversions or something. It was a putrid display by the offense. Etienne couldn't really get very much going. I think he broke a long one in which a long one was 18 yards at some point late in the game, and that was the longest play up to that point. It was another week where Beck is barely throwing downfield at all. It's sort of frustrating because you have to imagine that we can compete on the edges with our wide receivers against their cornerbacks. This is fucking Kentucky we're talking about. So yeah, is it possible they're looking ahead? Yes, because I think fundamentally, philosophically, they don't want to reveal anything that might be used against them moving forward. So maybe there's something great to be revealed in 2 weeks when we head to Tuscaloosa to face Alabama. As again going back to, is Kirby doing this shit on purpose? We're now number 2 in the AP poll, right? Because Texas leapfrogs us after a essentially flawless performance against whatever bums they were playing.
University of Texas San Antonio or some random team.
Right. And so Georgia drops to number 2. This fits in with Kirby's preferred narrative, which is everyone's against us. No, everybody doubts us.
They think we're going to go 8-4.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, even if he's not doing it on purpose, I don't think he's too mad about it.
Let it happen on purpose, like 9/11.
Or like Pearl Harbor, yeah.
Like Pearl Harbor.
Anyway, number 2 here, and we'll move on to the NFL, which you watched a little bit more of than college football.
I watched none.
Actually, let's go back to Georgia for a second here. Mark Stoops, who looks, as I've said many times before, like Melissa McCarthy playing Sean Spicer on SNL. That is who Mark Stoops most resembles in the world. Not Melissa McCarthy just as Melissa McCarthy, but Melissa McCarthy as Sean Spicer riding that podium around Manhattan. Mark Stoops, fundamentally conservative coach, I think it's fair to say. He likes to imagine that he is building a program that resembles the Georgia Bulldogs, right? He wants to build a grown man football kind of program. He wants to win in the trenches. He doesn't want to play. He's not going to run a West Coast offense down there in Lexington. But they're losing 13-12. The final score of the game is what they're losing by. Fairly late in the fourth quarter. I want to say 6 or 7 minutes, something like that. And they have a 3rd and 8 at roughly midfield, maybe just across midfield, right? Like the 45 or so. And they decide to throw the ball on 3rd and 8. And then on an incomplete pass, now 4th and 8, they decide to punt, which is giving the ball to, granted, their defense has held up reasonably well over the course of this game. They've recently given up a touchdown, but whatever. They're going to give the ball to one of the best offenses in the country and
supposedly
one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country.
Supposedly.
And instead of simply trying to possess it and continuing to hold the ball, because it's worth noting that it's very difficult to score points when you don't have the ball, and it's significantly easier to score points when you are in possession of the ball. What the fuck was Mark Stoops doing punting while losing late in the fourth quarter?
Not losing by much either. It was, like you said, 3rd and 8. This is I believe, on Georgia's side of the field barely. I mean, they're basically like midfield.
Right. Yeah.
it's 3rd and 8, and also it's 3-ish minutes. It's not like you have like a.
Was it 3-something minutes?
Yeah,
I think I said 6. Yeah, it was later than that.
So it was like, okay, what's the idea here? You're gonna punt and net like 15 yards? Like what is like? It made no sense. If it's 3rd and 8, think of 2 down territory. If you want to get like 3 or 4 yards, you could just run it or just a short pass or something.
Right. And like I said, the 3rd and 8, like this is, and to throw it on 3rd and 8 when this is when we've been getting to Brick Vandegrift all fucking day, is when he's forced to make a pass and there's not really any other option.
Right.
That's when we fucked him up. And that's when, like, he didn't make any spectacular plays really.
Right.
He wasn't very good. He was just good relative to, he did what, I mean, again, they didn't score any fucking touchdowns. We'll get into that in a minute too. But like, they weren't particularly good, but what was working for them was running right into us and bouncing off of us and picking up 4 or 6 yards out of nowhere. And so what you do on 3rd and 8, is you fucking hand the ball off and see if you can't pick up 3 or 4 or 5 yards, and then you're 4th and 3 or you're 4th and 4.
Very manageable, yeah,
and highly manageable. And then you would think have to go for it, but because he's so fundamentally conservative, he's like, no, it's 3rd and 8. You throw the ball on 3rd and 8, and then you punt.
Right. Also, like, I understand being conservative in some respects, but like you're Kentucky, you have the number 1 team on the ropes. Like,
what do you have to lose?
What do you have to lose?
You're supposed to lose this game by fucking 4 touchdowns, right? What are you holding on to here? Take your fucking shot. How often do you get this shot?
Right. Because now it's a loss, and like if you lose by 1, there's no moral victory here, right? You lost. It could have been by 3 scores. Like, just go for it. Just go for it and see what happens.
Right. He can secure. I mean, like, who knows? I imagine his job is relatively secure. They've had some success there the last couple of years. They keep beating Florida. But, like, besides that, what have they done? And he could dine out in Kentucky football history forever if he beats the number 1 Georgia team that had won 2 national titles and was seeking a 3rd in 4 years, right? Like, that's a career-defining kind of win for a program or for a coach like Mark Stoops at a program like Kentucky. And instead he fucking punts. Yeah. He's playing like you in Madden in 2008 when you're down by 15 with 10 minutes to go.
We talked about it today.
Just run and punt.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, he has, from what little I know about Kentucky football, he has job security, right? There's literally not a lot of downside. No one's going to fault him for being it's not even, I wouldn't even say aggressive. Like, that's not even aggressive. That's like the play to make. You know, you have 2 downs, make the best of it, try to get 8 yards. And so, like, no one would fault him for doing it and then failing at doing that. But if you punt it, just seems cowardly.
Right. I didn't see that. They didn't pop up on the screen any of the analytics that's like the book says go for it or whatever the fuck. But there's no way that the book doesn't say go for it when it's 4th and 8 at midfield and you're down a score.
Right.
You need 15 fucking yards to have a shot at a game-winning field goal. And you punt?
Yes. Just awful. That's a terrible choice by him.
There's a good clip from that podcast that we watched called Snaps in which...
it was right after.
Right after the game, they went live, and Aaron Murray and
I can find it for you if you want.
And the other fellow were talking about the game, and Aaron Murray goes on to defend the decision to punt, which is perfect for a guy who comes out of a Mike Bobo offense, and also perfect for a guy who has to go broadcast the Kentucky game this week and therefore sit in a coach's meeting room with Mark Stoops, so he probably couldn't tell the whole truth.
Might want Mark Stoops to like him.
Mark Stoops is getting paid $9 million a year to punt when $9 million a year in Kentucky to punt when you are trailing by a point to the number 1 team in the country, 5 yards into their territory, and you decide to fucking punt.
How did he swing $9 million? Was it the Will Levis like was he not the Kentucky quarterback? Like, how did he get that much money?
How's Will Levis working out for you there in the pros? By the way, a couple of good highlights from Will Levis the first 2 weeks of the NFL season.
That's remarkable. I would have guessed, like, you know, he'd be like $5-6 million, just somewhere in the middle where no one pays attention. He could just have that job forever if he wants it.
They hadn't beaten Florida in the swamp in like 25 years or something until they recently did it. Like, it had been a very long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
turns out Florida sucks though.
Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago it was impressive.
Is that a hard to fill position? Maybe there's like a extra couple of million they have to add on as a sweetener to be a head coach over there.
Don't want to lose the lesser Stoops brother. Can't have that. Don't want him getting like the call up from Arkansas or something. All right. Moving on. Question number 2. 3 questions, 2 statements, and 1 hot take. Are the Saints and the Vikings good, actually? And follow-up, are Derek Carr and Sam Darnold fucking awesome? Is the question.
I have no idea what's going on in the NFL, in particular with the quarterbacks. I'm watching Baker Mayfield doing well. I'm watching Darnold like having an amazing little run here. Derek Carr's doing great. All of these quarterbacks who are like retreads in some ways. Like I think Darnold and Mayfield were on the roster for the Panthers, and now the Panthers have to bench their first overall pick from just a year prior because they have no answers there. But like it's remarkable how random quarterbacks. I mean, Gardner Minshew's doing well with the Vegas team. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's just a short-term thing. I mean, Cincinnati and Baltimore, who have good quarterbacks, are 0-2. We're like in the upside down. I don't know if this is going to right itself halfway through the season, but early on, it's a very weird start.
I'm now officially rooting for Sam Darnold to be awesome, just because I think that would be hilarious. And one way, like, I've got to get some enjoyment out of the fact that I said that he was a total fucking bum, and now he seems to be fairly awesome. But he was good. He threw a 97-yard touchdown to Jefferson there with the Vikings. From the 3-yard line, and it wasn't like just a dink for 15 yards that Jefferson then turned into a 97-yard score.
Right.
It was like a legit fucking 40, 50-yard pass or something that he laid in there in just the right spot and got the job done.
Yeah, I don't know how long this will last, but it's fun watching. Anytime I see a highlights, I'm not watching Darnold football, but anytime I see highlights, it's always positive. I'm thinking like a pick six or some sort of fuck up, but he's doing well so far.
I said last week that the Falcons have time to figure stuff out because the NFC South seems to suck ass. But the Saints have now put up over 40 points, 47-10 in their opening week win over the Panthers, who were dreadful, as we discussed, and we'll discuss more in a moment. And then 44-19 over the Dak Prescott-led Cowboys with his brand new highest paid quarterback contract. If Derek Carr is beating you 44-19, it's safe to say you're not earning that contract just yet.
Also, you would think, that's just they're feasting on the Carolina Panthers week 1. Don't make too much out of that. They're going to face a much better team in the Cowboys, who shit the bed in the playoffs, but they are a competent regular season team. So even if they were to lose, it'd be a close game. But looking at the score, I'm like, what is going on with the Saints? Is this like actually a good team this year or what? I have no idea.
Well, everybody thought that their defense was going to be just fine and that the offense would be kind of a mess because you've got, first of all, Derek Carr leading the way there at quarterback, who's been a fine NFL player on some pretty goofy teams, like on those Raiders teams that he was on that were always a mess. But you didn't expect this. And then for fucking Alvin Kamara to have 4 touchdowns yesterday, too.
What year is this?
Seriously, this is like, I remember my dad drafted Alvin Kamara in like the first or second round the last year that we played fantasy football as a group, which was years ago. And I was like, look at my dad drafting this old washed up bum Alvin Kamara, who's certainly not going to put up those sorts of numbers again. And now it's like 5 years later and Kamara's going for 4 scores against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, Vikings are now 2-0 also. I was watching I turned on the Texans and Bears game last night after I got done with all of my youth sport and PTO communications responsibilities, and watching C.J. Stroud against Caleb Williams. And Chris Collinsworth had some interesting things to say about Williams, even while relentlessly pumping sunshine up Williams' ass and to the larger American public, which seems to be Chris Collinsworth's whole job, is to talk about how awesome
he has that Walmart commercial too, right?
Oh man, that is an all-time.
He has another job.
That is a Matt Ryan-esque acting job by Chris Collinsworth in the Walmart ad that they're showing now.
Well, and it's like they're trying to be a little meta or something, but it doesn't work, and it's too long.
Is this a new commercial? I must admit, I was.
It's new for this season.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen it before this season. He's
new.
trading on his "Here's a guy" tagline. That's the whole point of the commercial. And It's not a good enough tagline to like make your own. Like it's not nearly interesting enough. Like remember,
it doesn't work.
Remember Chucky? John Gruden sort of had a tag where it's like this guy,
and they forced this guy to win a game. And I want to see this guy realize all this talent. This guy's from West Texas State A&M. Mike, this guy's been brilliant. This guy's money, and this guy's a big explosive player. This guy ran all over the place, making plays. See this guy right here, Mike Westhoff. He's this guy. This guy has always demanded double coverage.
See, even Chucky couldn't make a "this guy" kind of tagline really work for him. But now Collinsworth. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
The commercial hinged on people clocking that's his thing. Like,
I think that the commercial was the idea of it is he cannot help himself from observing what's happening in the world around him without commenting on it by leading off with. Here's a guy who.
Right.
I see. Obnoxious commercial. I should do 10 push-ups now just for talking about it.
I brought it up. It's my fault, and I'm not doing them.
Lori should do 10 push-ups.
I'm just saying you said his whole job, and I'm saying the other part of his job is the bad commercial.
Right. Relentless sunshine pumper that he is. Despite that, he was offering some sort of veiled criticism of Williams last night, where he was suggesting that NFL plays are designed to be done in about 2.5 seconds. That like all of the route trees are like done at 2.5 seconds. You need to have made your decision at that point. And then it's time to either fucking throw it away or run away because you're probably about to be in big trouble if you continue sitting there and trying to figure out what to do after 2.5 seconds. And Caleb Williams is regularly hanging on to the ball like 3 and 4 seconds deep after the ball has been snapped, and he's saying like you've got to go well before then. And Collinsworth further pointed out that like a lot of the stuff that Williams was doing in college that so many people were impressed by was extending fucking blown up plays, that he was making these plays happen after 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds long after the ball has been snapped. And like, yeah, it looks like fucking hero ball out there and everybody likes it because you look like you're an awesome quarterback making shit happen. But like that doesn't fly in the NFL, and trying to run around like that unless you are like a truly next level freak of an athlete with superior escapability is not going to happen. And I wonder if, because I have, sort of vaguely watched Caleb Williams for the last 3 or 4 years at Oklahoma and USC. Like it's not like I watched every game, but from what I had seen, I believed none of the hype about Caleb Williams. Like, yeah, sure, he can make shit happen, but like making shit happen is not what succeeds at the NFL level. It's the Matthew Stafford kind of, here it is, fucking make it happen.
Be
right?
tall,
like,
throw a ball far.
Right. Be tall, throw a ball accurately, right the fuck away. Make the right decision as quickly as possible. And that's what a good NFL quarterback looks like. What I like about Michael Penix Jr. at Washington was the ball is out fucking quick.
Yes.
It's accurate, and he's got a fucking cannon. And then yes, also he has the ability to make stuff happen when stuff starts to break down. And whatever. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back as some sort of NFL quarterback analyst, but I didn't buy the Caleb Williams stuff, and I'm not heartened to see that he sucks in the NFL so far. But it's nice to know that my eyes weren't lying to me.
It may be too early to say this, but like I'm always concerned about quarterbacks going to playing for Chicago because I never see quarterbacks do that well. I guess Cutler was okay for a little while, but usually quarterbacks don't do too hot as under center for the Bears. And
Cutler was fun and hated life the whole time. That was what made Jay Cutler such an enjoyable watch. He's like sad Ben. He's the sad Ben Affleck meme as he's out there slinging balls and scoring touchdowns.
That's right. But yeah, so like it's not looking good so far. I mean, the team is 1-1, but they didn't win that first one because of him. Like he played like shit in week 1 as well. We'll see how this develops. But I do wonder, with all of these other quarterbacks like Darnold and Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr finding success in other teams, maybe for most quarterbacks, it's just the product that the environment that they're in is what makes them the quarterback. And so in Chicago, maybe not so hot, but maybe if he just kind of keeps his head on, in a few years he can end up with the Raiders and do well. But he's not going to do well with the Bears.
as we said about presidents, the river of history flows through the quarterback.
Okay, this is supposed to be the quick episode.
The quarterback does not direct the river of history, especially if your name is Tom fucking Brady. You end up in the most spectacular situation in the history of quarterbacking. Yeah. Question 3. If you get benched for Andy Dalton, should you... And by the way, the year is... Check the calendar here. The year is 2024. If you get benched for Andy Dalton in 2024, should you quit the sport of football?
Can I grow 6 inches?
Which 6 inches are you trying to grow?
The vertical
shoulders.
Oh, higher?
Yeah.
Okay. Honest to God, this is not a joke. When I saw I wasn't surprised by the benching, even though it's a bit early. But we're
talking about Bryce Young, by the way. Bryce Young for the Carolina Panthers has been benched for the coming week in favor of Andy Dalton.
Right. So when I read for Andy Dalton, like he's being benched for Andy Dalton, my first thought was like, wow, there's a second Andy Dalton in the NFL. I had no idea Andy Dalton was still in the NFL.
What are the odds?
Yeah. More likely to find success in the NFL. Like if you go back 10 years and say Geno Smith or Andy Dalton, which of these two? And it's not which, it's both. Yeah. They're both going to be starting in the NFL. A follow-up to should you just quit? Which former Alabama quarterback should just quit now?
Fucking Tua. Jesus Christ.
Should Tua, who has thoroughly scrambled brains and I think what they're calling it is his third concussion.
Yeah, they're calling it his third.
But I'm pretty sure it's like his. I think there's a digit missing there. There might be a 1 in front of that 3 that they're lying to us about.
They probably mean the major ones, right? I mean, is this do they call it fencing or that posture that some concussed people make? Is this the second time that has happened? Because he's had multiple...
That we are aware of.
At least the second time. I feel like I've seen him do that on the field multiple times a year.
No, there was the time that he was all spinny. He couldn't stand up straight. Yeah. Then there was the fencing. Then there was this one.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the third one that was like, holy shit, he's not okay.
Yeah. So Bryce Young or Tua Tagovailoa, which one should quit first?
For health reasons, obviously Tua should quit. I will say they should maybe add like a Tua rule going forward. If you have 2 of these fencing situations, that should trigger something.
2 of them?
Yeah, 2.
If you have Tua?
If you get 2 of them.
These?
But I do, on the Bryce Young side, I mean, what little confidence Bryce Young has must be totally gone by now. I mean, I don't think... Has a first overall, I mean, Jamarcus Russell had more time, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he was benched like week 2 in the second year, even though he was playing awfully. It's kind of hard to salvage your career.
I mean, Jamarcus, it was like years later, and they're like leaking stuff about Purple Drank or something.
That's right. That's true.
They needed to do this whole underhanded, dirty media campaign to get rid of Jamarcus.
But yeah, that's true. The problem with Bryce Young, by all accounts, like a wonderful guy. Like there's nothing like no character knocks on him. He's just like not very good at this sport, and he may have the yips, or he's got something where he can't seem to read the defense fast enough to make decisions, and he's just kind of just throwing the ball in any which way. And so I don't know how you can come back from being benched for Andy Dalton.
I mean, the only plausible way is, and I think
Andy Dalton gets hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no, if Andy Dalton really sucks, and then you can just throw your hands up and be like, well, if not even Andy Dalton can right this ship, then clearly me, Bryce Young, I was not the problem.
Right.
This is a systemic issue here in Carolina. It has nothing to do with the quarterback.
Right.
Because surely if anyone can right a ship, it's Andy Dalton. All right. 3 questions, 2 statements, and 1 hot take. I think that was the third question. Yeah, all right. So here's a statement. 4 teams in FBS football, which is there's FBS, which is normal football, and then there's FCS, which is all the bums. 4 teams in FBS football have not yet given up a touchdown. Ohio State, Georgia, and Ole Miss. Tennessee gave up 1 on an 87-yard pick 6. I think this weekend, but also hasn't given up an offensive TD. So that's 4 that haven't given up offensive TDs and 3 that have not given up any, period. Ohio State has played Akron and Western Michigan. They were off this weekend. Ole Miss has played Furman, Middle Tennessee, and Wake Forest, while Georgia has played Clemson, Tennessee Tech, and Kentucky. The statement is simply that. It's noting the stat that only 4 teams have not given up a touchdown, only 3 have not given up an offensive touchdown, and Georgia clearly has faced the stiffest competition en route to this particular stat, including Clemson, who appears to be pretty good, actually, and Kentucky, who at the very least is an SEC team. So
interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the defense was very bend but don't break this weekend. They did give up 4 field goals, including a couple of fucking long ones because, as my buddy Naveed has been noting for decades now, every fucking kicker, with the exception of Ohio State guy who gifted us a national title, becomes like an NFL All-Pro. They become Harrison Butker.
They're getting better
against the goddamn dogs, and it's fucking infuriating. So few shanks against the dogs through the years, except for that one big one, obviously. That's what I got for 3 questions, 2 statements, and 1 hot take. Do we have a hot take in the room? Anyone? Can we get 1 hot take?
No.
I think my hot take, with very little information, Arch Manning's going to be the greatest college football quarterback ever. Just lock it in.
Plenty of funny Twitter takes about the relative athleticism of Arch Manning. Relative to his uncles, Peyton and Eli. It's
weird because he is the spawn of the supposed fast Manning, the one that had some sort of injury.
The wide receiver.
Yeah, like Cooper. So he has
the one Manning who was apparently athletically gifted at birth, who was then some fucking witch's curse took him out, and the only Archie spawn that went on to do anything with their lives in terms of sport were the completely uncoordinated ones who were just full of either bizarre passion for the sport or Eli who's
we have a question, the athleticism versus coordination question we can save for a different day because this is the short.
Right.
We gotta move on.
The point here being, you might be right, and he's only the second best quarterback at his school because Quinn Ewers is actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And Arch is obviously also very good. It is interesting to me that this is happening at Texas at a time in which you would not expect top-tier, top-flight quarterbacks who project to be number 1 picks or at least top-round picks in the NFL draft in a couple of years would stay in the same quarterback room for more than a season, right? Arch is hanging out, waiting his turn.
It's only a sophomore.
Yeah, but you don't see a ton of that, where he knew definitively that this was not going to be his job this year, and he could probably go to, any of a number of other top-type schools. Now, granted, not one of the 3 best schools in the country, but he could have gone and got a starting job at 25 or 30
but then there'd be way more pressure, and then he probably wouldn't have as good athletes to throw to, so he wouldn't look as good. Where at Texas,
I don't disagree with his decision here. I just think it's interesting in an era of the transfer portal and plenty of moving around. Texas now can say, and this is a point I heard on a podcast earlier today, as a sales pitch almost. Look, we've got the best or second best quarterback in the country in Quinn Ewers, and right behind him we've got Arch Manning, who's going to be here for a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
Come play with us. Don't go somewhere else where you don't know what's going to be happening from year to year. We've got continuity here. So maybe that becomes a sort of selling point for these big programs.
Wouldn't it be?
If they can hang on to people.
Yeah, especially if you're a receiver. I want that guy throwing to me. I'll sign up.
Yeah. All right, let's run through the CIB Pick'em contest results from over the weekend.
Do we have to?
We could also not. We could just skip. We could just go to the next, we could leave.
Not a great week for any of the participants. Let's see here.
I also hardly watched any football this weekend, which sucked.
I watched a bunch of football on Saturday. What do you mean?
I didn't. You did.
Oh, sorry. I watched a bunch of football on Saturday. It was fun.
Do you have anything to say about your youth baseball while we're talking about sports?
What about it?
I don't know. I'm asking if you have anything to say.
Youth baseball, it was good. On Sunday, we had our first games of the fall season. I was at the ballpark from just before noon until almost 7 o'clock. Very long day.
Long day of baseball. It's lovely. It was beautiful out.
A beautiful day. Got cooking a little bit too much there in the sun, but it was fine. We went 1-1 on the day. The big kids, the majors team won handily. The minors team got our asses handed to us.
Just by 2 kids.
By 2 kids.
Brothers.
They could have almost certainly beaten us with just those two kids. We did put the ball in play a few times, and they made the outs that were necessary, but I don't think that we would have won if they had just had the brothers out there, who were the pitcher for 2 innings and the catcher for 2 innings, and then they flipped, and the catcher became the pitcher, and the pitcher became the catcher, and they're just awesome. They do not belong in the minor leagues, and it drives me a little crazy, just a little crazy, because my team is very much young and inexperienced.
Is that team except for them?
Well, no, they've got another 3 or 4 very good ball players on that team. But I've got a team that has half of my team has never played baseball before or never played above coach pitch before, where they've never faced kid pitching before. So like I've got a very young and inexperienced team, and I'm going up against kids who should probably be playing at the next level up. It's tough, but it's fine. I'm proud of the way that they battled after all. Anyway, back to the CIB Pick'em game. You guys trying to get me off topic here. Abe, you made 5 picks, as that's how we play the game. Yes. Everybody has to make 5 picks. You whiffed on Purdue and Notre Dame, even though you had the added benefit of the plus 11.5 points. That line just plummeted from where it opened at 12.5 as time went on. It closed at plus 9.5 for Purdue, which is where Jimmy Carter locked it in, and Notre Dame just destroyed the Spoilermakers.
Not very close, yeah. Actually, I don't think any of these Saturday games that I picked were particularly close. Very bad.
No, you had Georgia minus 23.5, which of course came nowhere near covering. The two teams barely scored 25 points altogether. We had Florida. You had Florida as a home underdog against Texas A&M, and the final score of that game, I don't know off the top of my head. It was uglier than that. Yeah. A&M controlled that game basically from start to finish, and Florida appears to really suck. You had East Carolina at home over App State. That didn't work out. And then you took the Packers to beat your Colts outright. So you scored 10 points by picking that underdog. So that's not too bad. You get 10 points.
It's literally the worst combination of outcomes. Basically, like the 4 that the Packers was just, buying the win kind of thing. Like I suspect the Colts should win this, even though it's like a road game. But
a road game against a backup quarterback.
Malik
they
Willis,
lose Jordan Love, who's supposed to be the next big thing, which I don't really buy either, right. But whatever. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll jump on the Colts minus 3 on the road against the stupid Packers with a backup quarterback. And then the Packers end up winning.
My level of confidence, it doesn't matter with the Colts, is very low. I mean, no matter who they go up against, if Malik Willis can do this to them, I know we do the Thursday show as the preview for the next week, but I'm going to get a jump start on it. The Colts are playing Caleb Williams next week. They're probably going to make him look like $1 million bucks. Like that's my prediction, and I'm going to pick the Bears again. But just an awful weekend on my end.
Yeah, I had LSU minus 7.5 at South Carolina, and that was a gnarly game. It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah. I caught bits and pieces of it.
A fun game to watch in the early window. Horrifically officiated, just awful.
All over this weekend.
Yeah, lots of bad officiating in college football this weekend, but that one in particular jumped out. South Carolina is sort of a fun team to watch. They've got this quarterback who runs around a bit and makes plays, and they're defensively they seem fairly stout, at least in the front seven. I don't imagine Georgia's. Do we play them this year?
Nope.
No, we don't play them at all. Just looking at it, I would imagine that Georgia would feast on them. I was surprised to see, and continue to be surprised for some reason, at what a mess Brian Kelly's LSU team is, just in terms of like discipline and looking like they know what the fuck they're doing out there. Like I thought that you get away from the Les Miles, Ed Ogeron school of coaching to go to someone like Brian Kelly, who's such a fucking hardo disciplinarian that he kills a graduate student in a television stand while demanding that his team practice in inclement weather. Yeah. But for whatever reason, the team just sort of looks like a mess. But they barely hang on to win it. A good SEC road win, certainly, because they were down 2 scores, 14 or 17 points or something like that. To have to come back from that is impressive, but LSU is going to lose a bunch of games this year. You can't do that. The games that I got right, the only 2 that I got right were Memphis. I had Memphis outright over Florida State. And Florida State was fucking hapless, and they had a chance to tie this game late, but that sort of doesn't tell the truth about that game either, which they lose 20-12. DJU fucking sucks ass.
He is terrible.
Everything I heard, all the podcasts were saying that the Florida State players just getting off the bus, you knew. Like, they're out, they're done.
Yeah, 0-3 for the second time under Norvell in his 4 seasons now, I think, or 3 or 4 seasons at Florida State. Rubbed in, I read a piece somewhere today about how the continued success of Travis Hunter just continues to rub salt in the wounds of Florida State people, because he was the first big domino that Norvell lost. He was committed to Florida State for like a year and then flips to go to with Dion to wherever Dion was before Colorado.
Oh, Jackson State. So he went to Jackson State before he went to Colorado with?
He's just following Dion around. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, Florida State's in trouble. I don't know. I mean, obviously, before the season started, you would have said Billy Napier at Florida is the university, the Florida University coach whose job is most in trouble.
I think that's still true.
Yeah.
I don't know. If Norvell loses...
They just re-signed... They just redid his contract.
I know, but like, holy shit, can you lose 8 games the year after going undefeated and keep your job? And
the year after going undefeated. Right. Look at what Billy Napier's the year after also sucking.
Yeah.
I didn't hear...
I think it's cruel for them to keep him employed. They should let him go.
I didn't see it or hear it, but I read about it that Florida's coach that team was getting booed during their game. So, like, I don't know if...
the coach was getting booed.
Yeah. So, like, I think I would be shocked if he stays past a couple more games. I mean, what's the point?
It's Monday. I thought it'd be today.
How many head coaches are you permitted to cycle through as the AD at a school before you have to be like, well, I guess I got to go?
Right. That would be a great moment, right? If he just fell on the sword, although maybe it would mess up his compensation. Maybe somebody needs to fire him so he can kind of keep some of his money. But
that's what they're talking about.
They need to arrange for that.
I had UCF as the road underdog, plus 1.5 points, and they won outright as I hoped for. So I ended up with 20 points on the weekend. By the way, not to give away the secrets here, but what you want to do is you want to play a couple of these close underdogs.
That's
find
what
the ones
I did.
that are going to win.
Great value, isn't it? Yeah.
You have to find the ones who are going to win, though, Lori. This is where you're confused. You keep picking losers.
Well, they can't always be Florida International with Pitbull behind them.
Well, I keep picking winners. All right, Lori lost.
I lost everything
4
but
out of
Georgia.
5 of her games, except for deciding that Georgia was a worthy contender for the measly 2 points. So Lori picks up 2 points on the weekend.
Yeah, but of all of us that picked the Georgia game, I was the only one right.
That's true.
That is true.
You got those 2 points, and then. Let's see. Listener Steve ends up with 15 points on the week by picking the Bills, which is a great pick, and I'm ashamed that I didn't have the Bills in that game. It's obvious that the Bills were going to win that game over the Dolphins outright, and then he had Maryland minus 2.5 over Virginia. And then he also had Oregon State plus 16.5, which he missed because Oregon looks pretty good, and we're completely in control of that game throughout. So that's another thing worth noting in the college football weekend. Bringing us to a running total this year so far, Abe at 30 points, the caboose in our little 4-person contest so far. Steve, listener Steve at 35. I keep calling him Listener Steve, which feels impersonal and
Seriously,
weird.
We sat next to him at Brian's wedding.
It's Cousin Steve, and I'm sorry for referring to you as Listener Steve. You're Cousin Steve. You're not my cousin, but you're Brian's cousin. So
But if Steve was at a place and someone was like, "Who is that?" I'd be like, Bob's cousin.
Yeah, sort of.
Like it
Close
would be.
enough.
It's right enough.
Cousin Steve in there at 35 points. Lori ahead of Steve by 2 with 37.
Go Dogs!
And I've got 65 points now on the season. It's worth noting, listeners out there, it's not too late to get in this game and still...
In a real way, it is.
No, it's not. You still jump right in it. With one good week, you can catch Abe.
Yeah, you can catch me up in 1 week. 1 week. Just listen to whatever Jimmy Carter picks, and it'll be fine.
Abe is averaging 10 points a week. Just jump in. It's totally fine. Get in on it. Send me your picks.
All right. We done?
That's the CIB Pick'em game. Oh, yeah. And I need to quickly go through we want to keep track of my chances at this season-long 9-team parlay. I put $50 on suggesting that all 9 of the teams that I selected would make the playoff. If all 9 teams make the playoff, I will win $24,000 and some change. If 8 out of the 9 teams make the playoff, then I will get $0, and I will have spent $50 just for the content of looking at this list every single week. By the way, bad week on the gambling app. My first negative week on the college football season so far. I didn't bet any NFL games, so I didn't try to chase bad bets after good ones the next day, which is probably for the best. Here we are. We have Texas, totally fine. Notre Dame, they kicked Purdue's ass, but I think they lost a couple of players to injury, which could prove problematic moving forward. Don't feel great about them, but they won, so we're fine. Penn State, I think Penn State was off. I don't know. If they did something, it wasn't meaningful. Oregon looked good again, so Oregon should be fine. Mizzou struggled a bit against Boston College.
Taking a page out of Kirby Smart's book.
Yeah, perhaps. Mizzou's a little bit of a worry now because that BC team should not have been too much trouble for them. You wouldn't have guessed, but that game was a one-score game. Utah looked great against Utah State. Feeling good about that.
With the backup, right?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that.
I think Cam whatever is hurt.
Cam Rising is hurt?
His hand, it's not a bad hurt. I think I don't know.
I thought I was feeling good about Utah, but if Cam Rising is hurt, he's kind of...
but he's not like ACL hurt. He's like my toe hurt. Like he's hurt temporarily. I might not have been... I don't know how you find this out, and I don't care to, but I think that it was the backup that was in this weekend.
Gotcha. All right. And then Boise State, Alabama, and Georgia all totally fine. So I'm feeling okay. There's a couple injuries to Notre Dame this weekend, but otherwise more confident this week than last. You've been listening to Cast Iron Balls, a podcast about sports with Bob and Abe, and Lori's here too. Check us out on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com. Abe, did you consume any other sports content this week that is worth talking about now?
Not consume necessarily, but just an experience I observed over the weekend. You know, whenever I'm out of town and I come across somebody, like either like an Uber driver or somebody at the bar or whatever. Once, we get to I'm visiting from wherever, from Atlanta.
This is Abe as Thomas Friedman in the world.
Yes. So I said on multiple occasions, I'm in town from Atlanta. Typically Atlanta, especially sports-related people, they'll somehow work in the Braves or especially the last couple of years, Georgia football. But on 3 separate occasions and at great length, people reference, the Falcons, what's going on? Why, what's going on with the Kirk Cousins? They would go into this deep,
weird
analysis of Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. Why don't you just start Penix Jr.? And, I thought you'd be doing much better. I don't know if the Falcons were, the hot team that people had preseason, and now they're disappointed early on. But, again, on 3 separate occasions, and we're not talking about just in passing, 5-10 minutes of just, they knew, the coaches. I'm nobody knows the Falcons other than Falcons fans.
Right.
It was very bizarre that, and 2 of them were in DC, and they would just shit on their own Commanders team for some reason. Even though,
but that's when you're a Redskins fan these days. It's just you have to consume all of the other NFL content because there's nothing fun happening for the commies ever.
Yes.
You, I assume, encouraged them to visit brainiron.substack.com where you have a podcast dedicated to the discussion of sports.
I never got the chance to. I was too busy shitting on the Falcons myself. By the way, to keep the tradition of I usually will proclaim an outcome before the podcast ends.
That's right. We've got the Falcons-Eagles kicking off in 10 minutes here.
Eagles, easy one.
Hurts gets hit as he throws and intercepted. Picked up by Jesse Bates. There are no flags, and with that, Arthur Blank's Atlanta Falcons are going to get out of Philadelphia with a win.
I don't think
Eagles easy. I think they're 5.5-point favorites tonight.
Yes.
Which honestly feels like a smaller number than I would have guessed based on what we saw in week 1.
Yeah,
so
and you think that would concern me, but no, easy.
That's the final snap of the night. And in a remarkable comeback, the Atlanta Falcons are going to leave Philadelphia with a 1-point win. And this crowd that's been celebrating all night lets the Eagles hear it on their way off the field, as now Philadelphia is 1-1.
All right. I watched the Braves last night, which I bring up only to say I finally sat down in front of the TV. We still had 2 TVs upstairs after Saturday's action, I should say.
It's the fucking best.
And so I put the Braves on one TV, and I put the Sunday night football game on the other TV. The Braves were hosting the Dodgers, one of the best teams in baseball. Just an infuriating team to watch is the fucking Dodgers, because they've got the Shohei Ohtani character, and it's like, okay, we can get around Shohei Ohtani. Oh, but who's behind him in the batting order? Oh, it's just Mookie fucking Betts, one of the greatest natural ball players I've ever seen play the sport of baseball. It's just one of the purest natural baseball players I've ever laid eyes upon, behind the Babe Ruth of his generation in Shohei Ohtani. Great fun to watch. And then, of course, rub it in with the fact that Freddie Freeman's on that fucking team, too. And then they have, 6 bums who just hit endless home runs out of nowhere, as they did last night. The Braves were winning 2-1. I've had a nice, long day at the ballpark. I've completed my stupid PTO email that I needed to get off last night. I turn on my beloved Braves on the television, and we're winning. We're beating the hated Dodgers 2-1 in the 7th inning. And there's a big shutdown inning, and the Braves reliever storms off the field. And yeah, we're super fucking proud. And then the Braves proceed to give up 9 unanswered runs or something like that, including I think it was 6 home runs in the fucking 9th inning to lose the game 9-2. It was very frustrating.
Okay. Good night.
Real quick, I've lost track of the Braves. Are they if the playoffs started today, would they be outside looking in, or?
Good question. They are, I think, right on the cusp right now. Let me pull it up, because they had a weird weekend where they're back and forth with the Mets for second place in the division, and so it's going to come down to them and the Diamondbacks and the Padres. So that NL West is fairly well packed. They've got the Dodgers out top, and then the Padres at 85 and 65, and the Diamondbacks at 83 and 66. And the Braves and the Mets are both 81 and 68 right now.
Okay.
So some work to do, certainly not out of the question here, which is really quite remarkable, because the Braves lost their best offensive player and their best pitcher in Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider fairly early on in the season, and have basically been saved by the fact that Boston Red Sox reject Chris Sale has come on and maybe put himself into the Hall of Fame with the way that he's pitched this year, after a career that's been marred by extended injury time missed. He had Tommy John surgery right before 2020 and missed basically 2 full years after that, and then barely pitched the year after that. So he's got this bizarre 3-year gap in his career, and he's missed a bunch of time besides that, but has been just fucking spectacular this year and saved the Braves season basically single-handedly. And yeah, they could make the playoffs essentially because of it. And this is a team that, again, has lost their backups to the backups, and they're now playing with backups. And it's quite a job by the Braves to keep things rolling in the right direction here, despite all of the injuries. Anyway, this is the short version of the show. We're now nearly an hour and 10 minutes into it, so maybe not so short after all. Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight, then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
What Gmail, the Gmail will it push to my phone or not algorithm is highly sensitive. So if I ignore a couple of emails in a row from somebody, it's nah, fucking, you clearly don't want to see this anymore. But like you open one email from some fucking marketing company because they snagged you with a snazzy pitch in their subject line. And it's like for 2 weeks, it's like, oh, yep, you definitely need to see more of this, you stupid asshole.
Is that how it works? Like if you interact with an email, there's some sort of knowledge?
I guess, yeah.
I don't know.
If anybody's doing it, it's Gmail.
Clean.
Their running back, whose names I do not have ready to hand.
Something sort of African.
Come on, Lori.
I don't know. Sort of African? Fuck off. That's very broad.
Look, if J.D. Vance had not poisoned the national conversation with darkies eating household pets last week, I don't think that you would be so quick to throw out such racisms here on Cast Iron Balls. I think this is we have sufficiently coarsened the national conversation.
It's open
to
season.
get to this point. You're going to see the running backs, who I'm sure have perfectly normal American names, bouncing.
Normal, huh? Normal? Normal?
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.